Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar,
Hayya ala salah,
Allahu Akbar.
I rise, giving the highest of praise to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the highest of honors to his holy and divine prophet, Noble Ali. I also extend those honors to the forerunner, the harbinger, the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, who did warn and stir up the nations. I give honors to the Moorish American standard, the red flag, the green five-pointed star, representing the highest principles that are known to man, which is love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. I also acknowledge the United Mercantile Trading Banner, also known as the American flag. I give honors to all Moorish Americans, both past, present, and future, who strive to promote this holy and divine and national movement by way of the Prophet's holy instructions and divine laws. I also give honors to all Asiatic organizations who strive to promote the interests of Asiatics all over the world, Islam. I give honors to Temple Number 19, the Office of the Grand Governor, Lieutenant Grand Governor, Sheik staff and the admin staff, and the mighty M19s who keep the peace. And last but certainly not least, I give honors to you, the Ills and Bays and the Sacred Groves, and our visitors, because when man honors man, he honors thy Father, God, Allah. Islam. Once again, all praises are due to Allah for having us here on another holy day evening so that we may continue to build on things that make us better citizens. We cannot give Allah enough praise for what he has done for us. If you all will excuse me, I'll be drawing from a pastoral demonstration. It says, with 1,000 tongues we cannot thank him enough, Islam, because that is absolutely true. When we think about all of the issues, because again, this is the holy day, and on the holy day, our prophet Jesus, alayhi salam, he took the time to meditate and to focus on the things that have passed, not only for that week, but in the days prior to that. And when you go back in your life and you look at the things that, if you look at all your trials and tribulations, I'm pretty sure regardless of what you may think, your triumphs are more than your shortcomings or your transgressions. And when we really think back, because again, masterminds trace themselves back, thus they know, we can see that that's truly a blessing. We can see that it's a blessing, again, coming from the pastoral demonstration in our Baptist church, that he woke you up this morning. He put you in the right frame of mind to know that we had to be the best that we can be, if anything, for this day. And if we can make it past this day, we can make it on to the next day, and the next day, and the next day, and so on and so forth. So we, as human beings, as Asiatics, as creations of Allah, and again, that is another blessing, because we are creations of the Most High. We are a reflection of him. We are truth and falsehood strangely mixed. We are a spirit and a part of Allah. But when we think about all those things, that's enough blessing for itself. How often do we take the time to live in the now? Because when we think about our past, we have a tendency to live and dwell in our past. But when we work, do we labor for the future? When we work, do we say, these are the goals and accomplishments that I have for this day? Do we have like a mental checklist that we go down in our minds? Do we make sure that when we go down to rest for the evening, that we count our blessings and we consider all of the things that we have accomplished today? That we have considered that we have made the most, or that we know that we have made the most out of our day, the most out of the blessings of that we've been given to by subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are the things that we should think about. When we think about the idea of religion, because again, religion in itself just means to trace yourself back. Religionaire. To go back to what you're loyal to and what you're devoted to that legion, to that group, to that ideal. But when we think about the idea of religion, we shouldn't think about it as just these customs and these forms. We shouldn't think about them as just as these traditions that we have that have been passed down from generation to generation. We should be thinking about religion as the foundation of culture. We should be thinking about religion as the path, that purity, if you will, that develops the path of a succeeding culture. When we say La ilaha illallah, there's no deity but the deity Allah, and we build up ceremonies and forms and customs to dhikr, to remember Allah, then that is establishing a culture. That is establishing a nation state. That is establishing how we as a people that are a part of Allah, how we continue to manifest that on the plane. Or to promote that or perpetuate that on the plane, to manifest rather. Islam? I'm going to read just three verses, on chapter 35, 3 verses, holy instructions from the Prophet on religion. And everything that I'm saying, it pretty much sums that up. Again, it's chapter 35 in your most holy Qurans. And we're just going to say that to raise up the ethers, because I'm not just saying all praises are due to Allah just because it sounds good. I'm saying it because I mean it. I'm very sincere about my relationship with Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. And I trust that all Moorish Americans are too. Because that is the very cusp of what establishes your nationality. Being able to trace yourself back to a land and a culture and a point of origin. And that point of origin is the Creator. And we know Him by many names. But every nation has the right, they are entitled to establish their ideal, their personal relationship as a collective with the Most High, with Allah. Everybody say Islam when we get to chapter 35.
Islam.
Holy instruction from the Prophet, religion. There is but one Allah, the author, the creator, the governor of the world, almighty, eternal, and incomprehensible. Islam?
Islam.
Almighty. That is one of the attributes of Allah. The 99 plus attributes. Al-Aziz. The mighty. The eternal. The incomprehensible. The omnipotent. Allah is aught. Allah is truth. He encompasses all. He created you from His Spirit, from nothing, from darkness, as we say. Because we know as Moorish Americans, from naught comes all. But He is all that we know that is in existence. From the air we breathe to the brother and sister that we look at in the mirror. Islam?
Islam.
We go on, and the whole concept of it being incomprehensible, that goes back to our chapter 1. Because we, even being a spirit and part of Allah, we're just that on the plane of manifest. We still have a finite mind. So even the way that I'm explaining Allah, it still doesn't make up everything that He is. I can only see it and I can only explain it to you with my mind's eye. But you're going to have your own definition of that. And even with that, more power to you, it still doesn't amount to what Allah is. We can't even begin to do that. And that in itself, again, is a blessing. It is a mercy from Allah. Because some things are left unknown. Are better left unknown. Just knowing that we are, we play an integral part in the cosmic scheme of things. In our reality, in our truth. This is what gives us purpose. This is what inspires us. This is what compels us and drives us to move on, to succeed. Or rather, this is what should. Islam?
Islam.
Verse 2. The sun is not Allah, though his noblest image. He enlighteneth the world with his brightness. His warmth giveth life to the products of the earth. Admire him as the creature, the instrument of Allah, but worship him not. Islam, family?
Islam.
Now, our prophet gives us a specific object in relevance to Allah. And he specifically says this is not Allah. It is his noblest image. Symbol, rather. But he gives it, he likens Allah, or he says one of the examples of Allah, or the noblest image of Allah, is the sun. And he says, well, what is it that the sun, what's the job of the sun? Well, he gives an example. He says, the sun enlighteneth the world with its brightness. Now, we can say that enlighteneth, we can use that in a couple of ways. We can say enlighteneth as far as providing light out of the darkness, sunshine, warmth. But we can also think about it giving a relevance to Allah as enlighteneth as giving knowledge. Giving information. Because your thoughts are not your own. Your mind is not your own. They belong to Allah. They come from Allah. You yourself get these revelations based on your life, your experiences. You interact with different parts of Allah. And these thoughts and these thoughts, they come to mind because this is Allah. Again, I'm explaining this from my finite mind. This is him calculating how he can just interact, how he can know himself better. Because it says in page 3 of our Most Holy Quran, know thyself and thy Father God Allah. So Allah, with him being Allahu Alam, him being the all-knowing, this is how he gets to know himself. Because we're getting to know each other. Islam?
Islam.
So again, he enlighteneth the world with his brightness. He brings us up out of the darkness. He brings us out of the stage of being stagnant. Because when you're bright, you're considered to be smart. And when you're smart, you do stuff, right? Most smart people, they do stuff. You don't see that many smart people that are just stagnant. So he brings us out of this darkness. And again, going back to chapter 1 of the Most Holy Quran, that is explained with us being the seed, deeply planted. And then again, going back to the concept of the sun, when he enlighteneth the world with his brightness, it gives the seed the opportunity to grow. Are y'all understanding what I'm saying?
Islam.
His warmth giveth life to the products of the earth. Going back to what I just said. Admire him as the creature, the instrument of Allah, but worship him not. Islam?
Islam.
I'll get back to that. I'll go back to that later. Verse 3. To the one who is supreme, most wise and beneficent, and to him alone belong the worship, adoration, thanksgiving, and praise. Islam?
Islam.
When we think about all of the things that go wrong in our life, what we should always remember once we go past that point of loathing, if you will, because it's our nature to feel. It's our nature. That's part of our soul. That's one of the actions of the soul, is to feel. So that's how we interact. That's how we interpret the interaction of a thing, of these things. But when we get past that, and certain things that don't go right in our lives, and that will not go right in our lives, let's just put that out there. Everything will not go as planned. but Allah is our protector and our guide and our salvation. So when we say this Moorish American prayer, we're not just saying it because it sounds good. This is not something that, well, let's do this. Hypothetically speaking, this is tradition. This is practice. This is culture. This is religion. Our religion is Islamism, and one of the customs of our Islamism being religion is this Moorish American prayer. Because that's how we remember where we came from. And when we say this Moorish American prayer, Allah, the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation by night and by day through His holy prophet, Drew Ali. Ameen. We should say that with sincerity. We should say that with conviction. Because we should know without a shadow of a doubt, this statement is true. It's a reminder. What we're causing to manifest, or what we're invoking, is the power of Allah. That salvation. When we look at our divine constitution and bylaws, we see that we have salvation, Allah, unity. So we know that Allah is forever watching us. He's forever a part of us. We forever belong to Him. But that is also our salvation, knowing that there's a higher power and we are a manifest of that higher power. But getting back to initially what I was saying is that regardless of what goes on in your life, we should remember that Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation. So when you lose your path, or when something happens to you, when you're in need of something, He is Al-Razak. He's that protector. He's that provider. When you get lost, because we all get lost. We all get lost on this path of righteousness, as they say, of being consciousness. We all get lost. But He is our guide, right? He is that light that shines out of the darkness, right?
That's right.
And our salvation. Because our prophet says that we are going to a destination which is not uncertain or unknown. And so Allah is guiding us by way of our prophet, through his holy prophet, Drew Ali. Ameen. So, as Moorish Americans, we have a standard. And our standard is also known as flag. It's red with the green 5-pointed star representing the highest principles known to man, which is love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. But again, as I said earlier, it's one thing to verbally say it, to recite it, almost as if you're a parakeet. And recitation is the father of learning, but the point of that recitation is to make it a part of every part. That recitation is yet a hammer to drive it home. Right?
Islam.
So, with that, we have to study what we're reciting. In other words, we have to be what we know, thus establishing that understanding, which is that rock, that solid foundation. So I'm actually going to keep it simple today. We're going to keep it practical. We're going to talk about love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. We're going to talk about these 5 principles, right? Question. Why did our prophet, by way of Father God Allah, why did he give us these 5 principles? Why did he give us 5 principles? Why didn't he give us 6, 7, 8? 7 is a powerful number as well. Why did he give us these specific principles? Love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. He could have gave us anything. But why those? Let's open up the floor.
Those are the principles of our ancient forefathers.
Principles of ancient forefathers. How do we know this?
Because our prophet told us.
Islam. Islam, because our prophet told us. Indeed, I agree with the brother. We don't know exactly why our prophet is giving this to us. But just as you said, brother, masterminds trace themselves back, thus they know. So we can see through these cycles of ages, as we've researched our forefathers, that these principles have been demonstrated in one way or the other. Regardless of what you call them, it all boils down to these 5 principles. Love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. And if we want to go into the numerology of it, we know 5 represents man, which is the highest form, right? So let's talk about this idea of a principle. What is a principle? Principle is a standard. So it's a concept of moral origin, right? So when we talk about principles, we're talking about a foundation. All right, so there's another word. We have solid rock, we have foundation, we have arc. You know, these are all keystones even. These are all objects and elements and signs and symbols that represent building a firm foundation, building a firm structure, building the temple of perfected man, if you will, right? Talks about a principle being a source. Again, a point of origin, right? So when we talk about these 5 principles, we're talking about 5 foundational elements that build better citizens. And to build better citizens, we first have to be better men, better women, better children, right? So the first principle or moral or standard or foundation that we have is love. And I want y'all to write this down. I started with something last Holy Day meeting, and I just wanted to continue with it because I just thought it was interesting. I'm a geek like that. So I have a digital copy of our Moorish Holy Quran. And the interesting thing about our Moorish Holy Quran is that you can, the digital copy of the Moorish Holy Quran is you can type in a word, and it can tell you how many times a word has been used in this document, right? Love in the Moorish Holy Quran is used 75 times, right? And it's actually the most word out of the 5 principles, interestingly enough. And I want to make this clear too. When we talk about these principles, these are divine principles, meaning that they come from Allah. Being that we are, again, a spirit and a part of Allah, these principles are divine. These principles are relative to our connection to the Most High. Right? So again, love. Love, as it's stated in etymology as well as in the dictionary, Merriam-Webster dictionary, is an attraction, joy. It also goes on by talking about it being a belief, and that's one of our 3 stages of development to that deific life. Is belief. So love, based on their definition, is partial or relative to belief, and it also goes into one's desires. And even when we go to the pre-Indo-European or Sanskrit, it even talks about one being crazy, right? But that's only a particular aspect of it, because we have different degrees of love. So I want to add on to this idea of what love is based on our prophet and the doctrine of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Love is a thought or mindset of adoration. All right? And I want to make this clear. When we talk about love, when you actually look at the definition of love, they can't give you a definition. Because they say love is love. Or love is the action of love. Or love is the act of being in love. That's retarded. But when you have the power to define, as all nations do, you have the power to sit back and research and observe, your brothers and your sister and find out what is this thing with love. And love is a mindset. It's a thought, right? The giving of presents, of favors, of doing things, of giving money and whatever. Those are actions of love. That is not love, because you have an adoration. You have a high adoration for someone or something. You express that high adoration by doing things. Are y'all with me? So if somebody needed to borrow $1, you give them $1. Someone needed a ride to the grocery store, you give them a ride to the grocery store. Our prophet, in the very first few pages of our Most Holy Quran, says, learn to love instead of hate. So then going back to, if love is a mindset, then what is hate? Hate is also a mindset. Because what do you do when you hate someone? When you have that thought of hate? Hey bro, can I borrow $1? No, I don't have it. You might have it just hanging out your pocket. What is that hanging out your pocket right there? I don't know what it is. You know how we try to hide money. We're good for hiding money. We act differently when we have a thought of hatred towards someone. So now let's think about that on a larger scale. Our prophet said, learn to love instead of hate. So it's obvious to a certain extent we have a hatred for each other. You can see that out there when you go to the cares of the world, when you go out there to the dunya. And given that we bought it on ourselves, we don't have a high adoration. We don't have a high appreciation for one another. Because if we do, we would be laboring to promote each other's success and prosperity. But right now, it's, I'm going to get mine. I'm going to worry about me and you worry about you. But there's no creation of Allah on this plane of manifest that prospers without the assistance of that same species. If you can name one, let me know. I guarantee you they're probably on the brink of extinction. Right? But love is a thought. Thought is the cause of it all. Allah loved us so much that He wanted to create us. We as artists, as writers, when we create, that is an act of love.
That's right.
This is what we do. Love is an action. It is a show of appreciation for Allah's creation. So we should have love for one another. But it says prior to love, we must have purity. And purity is that concept of removing everything that deters you from loving. You have to clear that path. So you have to make the way to receive the love, to give love, to love yourself. In order for you to love yourself, you have to purge the things, you have to kill off the things that make you hate yourself. Going back to our doctrine, being Negro, black, and colored, those are signs of hate. Because we're operating off the thought process of being Negro, black, and colored. Because Negro, black, and colored is not showing adoration for one another.
Come on now.
It's just reiterating the fact that you're dead. You're dead to me. I'm looking at a corpse. Right? But if I'm looking at love made manifest, I'm looking at life. I'm looking at beauty. If I see that in myself, I should be able to see that in my brother or my sister, right?
That's right.
That is love. Then we have truth. Truth is, again, that's another thought. That's another element. When we talk about truth, truth is actually mentioned in the Most Holy Quran 50 times. Right? And I just want to go from chapter 7. I want to talk about truth real quick. Chapter 7, you don't have to go there. You can just put it in your notes in the Most Holy Quran. Chapter 7, verse 3 through 5 says, and Jesus said truth. Well, let's go back to 2. And one day, Jesus and Lamas walked alone in Plaza Jagannath. And Lamas said, my Jewish master, what is truth? Now we're on 3. And Jesus says, truth is the only thing that changes not. In all the world, there are 2 things. The other is falsehood. And falsehood is that which seems to be. And it goes on by saying, now truth is ought and has no cause, and yet is the cause of everything. I'm going to stop right there. Because when we go into the definition of truth, the secular definition of truth, we talk about that. It is something that's firm, solid, steadfast. It's immutable. It is not changing. But then it goes on by saying in our most holy Quran that truth changes not, but yet is the cause of everything. It is everything. Because we, as a nation, as a group of people sharing an ideal, we have the ability to develop and change our truth. And in establishing that truth can bring about our reality, can bring about success. Truth is everything. What we think is true, we want to think about this truth, especially again as us as a nation, as this thing that has to be that's right and exact. It just has to be everywhere. It just has to be something that just is not moving. All right? And the fact that we are a spirit and a part of Allah, that is something that will not change. Therefore, it is truth. But now we have to take that truth and have to manifest that into a reality that we can live in and we can prosper. Right? Then we go into peace. We all want peace. Peace, my brother. Peace, sister. Peace this, peace that. But peace is very interesting, right? Because when we talk about peace, also, when we talk about truth, truth is also relative to faith. All right? So we have love being belief, and then we have, or love being relative to belief, and truth being relative to faith. And that, again, that's part of our 3 steps to a deific life. All right? Belief and faith. But peace is defined as freedom from civil disorder. Freedom from civil disorder. Islam means peace.
That's right.
It means being in harmony with all the creations of Father God Allah.
That's right, Sheik.
But there's a caveat to peace. It's very interesting. Also, in the concept of peace, it means to reconcile. It means silence. It means compact or agreement. To fasten. And to fasten is another word saying to link or to bond. Right? We have the heart chakra, the anahata. Now, anahata, it means sound produced without 2 touching parts.
Demonstrate.
And by way of our Moorish doctrine, it says the nearest place we can find Allah is where?
In the heart.
In the heart. And it says in order to have that happen, it has to be pure and clean in your heart chakra. So you have to be willing to communicate. You have to be willing to humble yourself and remove that hubris from your thoughts. Right? Unhurt, unstruck. That is peace. So when we talk about peace, we have to say, do we have peace within ourselves? Are we in conflict with ourselves? To a degree we are, because our prophet said that man is truth and falsehood strangely mixed. But our sister said that the devil was defeated. And the devil is sometimes called the lower self, right? So it has to be controlled. Don't let it control you. Don't let it devour your mind. Don't let it devour your thoughts.
That's right.
Right? That is peace. And then after that, another principle, our fourth element of foundation, if you will, is freedom. We want freedom. Well, what is freedom? Do we understand what freedom means? Do we have that understanding? Freedom doesn't mean you can do whatever you want to do. That's liberation.
That's right.
And we're not liberated. We're not exercising that without any thoughts of ramifications. Or, you know what I mean?
That's right, Sheik. Come on, man.
Freedom is defined as power of self-determination. That is freedom. Not in bondage. Acting of one's will. But with freedom is responsibility. See, this is also a stepping process. Because in order for us to even get to this point of love, of freedom, we have to first love each other. We have to love ourselves. And then we'll find out what that truth is. And that truth, again, is that we are thought of Allah made manifest. We are worth something. We're not black. We're not this chair right here. I use that example all the time, but I just want us to put that, I want to bring it to fruition. I want y'all to really to understand this concept. When you consider yourself black, you're still considered under chattel slavery.
That's right.
You're worthless. You're just as this chair. Just like this stand or this suit that this brother's wearing. You're disposable. You have very limited value. But human life is priceless. That's the pinnacle of wisdom.
That's right.
The preservation of life. Freedom, the power for self-determination. What have we self-determined? What have we determined as a group of people? Have we determined one collective idea? Or are we just different ideas trying to coexist? There's only one way to coexist, and that is it has to be an agreement. It has to be a common denominator. It's the only way. It's the only way. So before we can have freedom, before we can have freedom, we have to have peace. We have to work together. And then finally, we have justice. And justice is the exercise of authority or vindication by assigning reward or punishment. But that's only just one aspect of justice. Because we can talk about we want justice until our tongues turn blue. But justice first has to be demonstrated by ourselves. And justice comes from the word just, to be right, to be righteous. And to be righteous is to be of a fair quality. And nationality is defined as that quality of character, which arises from a person belonging to a nation or a state.
Sorry.
So in order for us that concept of quality or quality of character, we all as Moorish Americans have to be just. We have to be righteous, not self-righteous,
Right.
just righteous. So we have to know within our hearts, within our spirits, what we have to do to promote our success. Right?
That's right.
And we not only have to have that for our brother or for ourselves, but for our brothers and our sisters. We are not free unless everybody else is free. No one person. How many of us think that LeBron James had was the only basketball player that had a school? How many of us think that Jalen Rose was the only person was before LeBron James? There are several NBA players that have schools. But when and the point that I'm making is that going back to the concept of truth, is that we cannot allow outside influences to shape our reality, to shape our truth. So when we talk about LeBron James and Jalen Rose and so on and so forth, we want to give power to them. We want to make it much appreciated. But that is not the defining narrative. Because we have to continue to push forward, because the reality is, even though the truth is LeBron James has this, that there's more schools by basketball players, by NBA basketball players, the reality is it's not here in Atlanta, Georgia, that we can benefit from. Others can, and again, praise is due to Allah, mashallah. But that, if anything, should inspire us to build our own school.
That's fair enough.
How much do you think it costs to really build a school? All right, let me rephrase that. How much do you think it'll cost to have a school? It really doesn't cost that much to have a school. You can have a school in your house. You can get, as a community, you can have a community meeting and say, look, we want to have a school. And then whoever wants to be in charge of that, they can go up to the Department of Education in Georgia and figure out what the criteria is. Make sure you have all those criteria and that you're able to adhere to those. And you can start a school. And all the children in the neighborhood can be in that school, can be in that private school, can be in that charter school. If you want to make it public, if you have enough money, then so be it. And we can start not only teaching the basic curriculums, math, science, so on and so forth, but we can teach them our history. We can teach them things that are conducive, that are relevant into building a better community.
Yes,
That's what the schools that we need to have. In other words, you get out what you put in. Because if we develop this school for our children, then what are the children going to do for us? They're going to be put in a position where they can give back. That's justice. We have a chapter in our Moorish Holy Quran talking about justice. And I'm going to leave you with this part, this chapter, or this verse rather, from justice. It's on chapter 23, verse 11. And it reads, when it talks about, and these are the holy instructions for children. So, our prophet, we being children of our prophet Noble Drew Ali alayhi salam being our father, being our spiritual father, he gave us instructions on how to interact with each other, how to interact with society. And in this, he's given us lessons. And I'm just going to talk about one of those lessons. He says, to teach him justice, and he should be honored by the world. Teach him justice, and he should be honored by the world. So in other words, if you live just, if you live righteous, if you live in fairness, not being a pushover, but being fair, then you will be honored for your good deeds. And you will definitely get a favorable reply. But being justice, or having that end result of success, comes before, it has to be developed with the help of these four other principles, with those four other standards, those foundations. Islam? So with that, I hope that our visitors, our members, have a better understanding of these five principles, of these five divine principles, and we can and begin to practice them in a manner that is pleasable to Allah. Islam?
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar.
حي على الصلاة.
Allahu Akbar.